greatly. I would go beyond the question of equality and put it more generally, that any process to ascribe any status to any group of people, equality, inferiority, superiority, must necessarily reduce freedom, because whatever the government wishes to ascribe to any group, whatever place, to use the phrase that was very common in the South, that blacks should have their place, whatever place the government is going to assign to people, that place will not coincide, that place will not coincide either with what all those people are doing or with how others perceive all those people, because there's too much diversity among human beings. To maintain any system of ascribed status from the top is going to mean reducing people's freedom across the spectrum. That's the point.
People have an ascribed status. It isn't as if government, by its intervention, creates it. People are born into this world in a given sector of a society, and many, many of them are born at the bottom of the society. The argument about equality of results was an argument that was linked to equality of opportunity. People recognized that unless there was a degree of equality in a degree of enough food, enough security, access to education, unless these things were available to all children, then equality of opportunity was merely a mockery. That's why equality of results became an issue, and it became an issue for black people in the United States, and they expressed their concern, whatever the opinion.
You expressed it, damn it, look. No, they did not. They did not.
They expressed
Can I just finish it and then reply?
They expressed their will by their extraordinary participation in a protest movement that began in the late 1950s and didn't end until the 1960s. Intellectuals were not in that protest movement.
You want me to answer, or you want to keep
People
going?
were in that protest.
You want me to answer?
I finished.
Yes.
Good.
Hey everyone, let's talk about equality. Now a lot of people say they're for equality, but that's a meaningless statement in and of itself. When someone says, I'm for equality, or I'm for equal treatment, or I'm for, any of these bland, vanilla statements, you need to ask what kind of equality, because there really are two kinds of equality, and they are diametrically opposed to one another. You can't have one form of equality except at the expense of the other. And these two types of equality are equality before the law and equality of outcome. Now, I did a little bit of research for this video, and I found that a lot of people made a distinction between equal opportunity and equality of outcomes. However, the phrase equal opportunity has been completely co-opted by those who favor equal outcomes, to the point that even the phrase equal opportunity is now meaningless. You now have to ask them what kind of equal opportunity. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me back up and explain why equality before the law and equality of outcomes are diametrically opposed, and one can only exist at the expense of the other. So based on nature and common sense, we're all different. No two people, let alone two genders or races or classes, are going to be alike in every way. Absolute equality is completely absurd. Nobody advocates for absolute equality. We would have to basically take one person, clone them 1 billion times, and we'd all have to be clones of one person. But even then, even if we were all clones of the same person, we would still be different in subtle ways. You see this already in things like identical twins. Two people having the same genes, having almost identical appearances, and yet they have different personalities. They have different hobbies. They have different likes and dislikes. And these are identical twins. Now, if identical twins can be this distinct, how much more so people who don't share the same genes, who weren't raised in the same family, who don't have the same socioeconomic background? People cannot be equal. When you have equality before the law, it means everybody's playing by the same rules. However, because people are different, they will achieve different levels of success. People who are born healthy with no disabilities, born to rich parents in wealthy countries, given a proper education, and who have a passion for some high-paying career are probably going to go much farther in life than someone who is born disabled, in a poor socioeconomic background, in a poor country, so on and so forth. These two people, through no fault of their own, through luck mostly, are going to achieve vastly different things. Now, in today's modern vernacular, this is called privilege, but it's not privilege. Nobody granted you luck. If you happen to be born white male in a Western country, that's not privilege, that's luck. You could have just as easily been born a poor black aborigine in Australia. The point is, if we all play by the same rules, we will not achieve the same outcomes. Think of it like a race. If we all start at the same starting line, and when the gun is fired, we all run our fastest, those who are physically faster are going to win the race. If you're slower, you're not going to win a foot race, so you're going to lose. The people who are the fastest are going to win. If we all start at the same starting line and start at the same time. Equality before the law means everybody starts at the same point, but they don't finish at the same point. They finish according to the talents they're given, either by development, hard work, or simply luck. Because life's not fair. In the Declaration of Independence, it talks about all men are created equal. That concept of being created equal is equality before the law. We start at the same point. We don't end at the same point, but we start at the same point, and we see how far we can go with our natural abilities and hard work. And some will naturally go farther than others based on innate talents that they had no control over. And others will struggle because of innate handicaps that they have no control over. Anyway, that's equality before the law. Now, equality of outcomes is the complete opposite. Equality of outcomes dictates that everybody finish the same, as opposed to start the same. Now, hopefully you can see just by common sense how these two things cannot exist except at the expense of the other. So with equality of outcomes, imagine a race. If you wanted everybody to finish at the same point, you would have to start certain racers ahead or behind others. You would put the fastest racer far beyond the pack so that they would have to catch up. And then you put the slowest person right next to the finish line. So by the time they took 5 or 6 steps, they would already be there, right about the same time that the fastest racer would be catching up. That way everyone would finish the race at the same time. In order to achieve equality of outcomes, you must treat people unequally. You must actively discriminate against people who have innate advantages, and you must support and elevate those who have innate disadvantages. This is the only way to achieve equality of outcomes. And in order to do that, you must handicap people legally. You must enforce these handicaps. This means you must treat them unequally before the law. You simply can't have both. If you believe in equality before the law, you must be against equality of outcomes. If you believe in equality of outcomes, you must be against equality before the law. And you see this time and time again with different social movements. For example, in the 1960s, the Civil Rights Movement was about black people wanting equality before the law. Today, you have Black Lives Matter, which is about equality of outcomes. Do I really need to go into the differences between the Civil Rights Movement and Black Lives Matter? I think it's been covered pretty well by other channels, so I'll just leave it at that. You also see this dichotomy in the men's rights movement versus feminism. The men's rights movement is largely about equality before the law. They want the laws to be equal for men and women. However, feminism is about equality of outcomes. They want men and women to be equal in results. Thus, they must discriminate against men. They must promote women over men. They must harm men in order to elevate women to achieve equal results with men. This is why when MRAs get in arguments with feminists about what feminism is and how it's not really about equality, feminists point to the dictionary definition and say, well, see, it's just about social, political, and economic equality. And the MRAs are like, well, feminism's not about equality. It actually is about equality. It's about equality of outcomes. The dictionary definition of feminism is entirely accurate. It's about equality of outcomes, social, political, and economic equality. Those are equality of outcomes. If you believe in equality before the law, you're not going to have social, political, and economic equality, especially not economic equality. I mean, come on. That alone should let you know this is talking about equality of outcomes, not equality before the law. This is why it's a waste of time to argue about the dictionary definition of feminism. If you understand that social, political, and economic equality is a euphemism for equality of outcomes, the dictionary definition makes perfect sense. And this is why I don't call myself an egalitarian, because the dictionary definition of egalitarian also says social, political, and economic equality, meaning equality of outcomes. However, I do believe in equality before the law. I don't call myself an egalitarian because that's not what the dictionary definition of egalitarian is. I don't really know if there's a word for someone who simply believes in equality before the law, but whatever it is, that's me. Now let's talk about equal opportunity. The sad fact is, equal opportunity can mean either equality before the law or equality of outcomes. And for the most part, whenever I've run into someone who promotes equal opportunity, they actually believe in equality of outcomes, but they don't want to say it that way. They use equality of opportunity as some sort of fig leaf to cover up the fact that they actually believe in equality of outcomes. So it's just, again, it's this co-option of language. So let me explain the two ways to understand equal opportunity. I believe in equal opportunity, meaning that people shouldn't have arbitrary barriers, like discrimination and so forth, getting in the way of their freedom. They should be able to work in any job they're qualified for. They shouldn't be discriminated against. They shouldn't have anybody holding them back. That is equal opportunity. Allowing people to achieve as much as they can through their hard work and talent. However, someone who believes in equality of outcomes believes that equal opportunity means that in order to give people the opportunity, they must have equal outcomes at the beginning. For example, it doesn't make sense to say that, if someone with no legs, who can't talk, who's mentally retarded, has the same opportunities as someone who doesn't have those disabilities. So equal opportunity is a farce. In order to have equal opportunity, you must have equality of outcomes at the outset. So my point is, people who say they're for equal opportunity, you need to then ask, what do you mean by equal opportunity? Define equal opportunity. What do you mean? If they say, well, everyone should have the same stuff so they can achieve the same according to whatever. I mean, once you scratch the surface, and this has happened pretty much every time. Anytime I talk to someone who says they believe in equality and I say, what do you mean by equality? Define equality. And they start with equal opportunity. Once you scratch the surface, they almost always mean equality of outcomes. They may not even realize they mean equality of outcomes. Most people don't think too critically about what they believe. They just parrot what they hear. They copy what other people tell them to believe. They don't actually critically think about it themselves. They may not even realize that they believe in equality of outcomes. They may deny they believe in equality of outcomes. And they may adamantly believe they believe in equal opportunity. However, if you scratch the surface, if you get them to think critically about it, you might get them to admit that they actually believe in equality of outcomes. However, I haven't met anyone who actually says, I believe in equality before the law, who also believes in equality of outcomes, because these two are literally diametrically opposed to one another. You must discriminate against people in order to achieve equal outcomes. Therefore, they cannot be equal before the law. And if they are equal before the law, they are going to achieve different outcomes based on their innate talents and skills. So they're not going to have equal outcomes. So you have to choose one. Which equality do you believe in? Do you believe in equality before the law? Or do you believe in equality of outcomes? And if you say I believe in equal opportunity, but not necessarily equality before the law, you believe in equality of outcomes. You may just not want to admit it to yourself. One of the biggest accusations leveled against the capitalistic system that believes in equality before the law is that it creates wealth inequality. Well, so fucking what? Wealth inequality doesn't matter. All that matters is class mobility. If you could start off in the lower class and through hard work or intelligence or even luck, break into the upper class, there's no problem. Who cares about wealth inequality? People change so-called classes many times throughout their life. When they first leave their parents' house at 18, they're probably poor, or at best working class. And then they hit their 30s and 40s, they're maybe middle class, upper middle class, maybe even rich. And then as they get older into retirement, maybe they're rich, maybe they're middle class, maybe they're poor again. The point is, classes aren't static. You're not born into a class. All these sob stories about, oh, these rich people, and their kids never had to work a day in their life. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. The vast majority of millionaires are first generation rich. They earned their money. They didn't inherit it. If you want to be rich, it's not that hard. I even made a video about joining the 1%. Nobody watches it. People would rather hear me call feminists retarded than actually learn how to make money. The secrets are out there. It's not that hard. The problem is people just want to give up. They want to blame someone else. And they blame the boogeyman of freedom. They blame the boogeyman of equality before the law. They think it's unfair because somebody else achieved more than them. Well, they probably worked harder than you. Or maybe they were born with more skill than you. Well, that just means you have to work harder. So fucking what? What are you gonna do, cry about it? Rub some dirt on it, get off your ass, and work. If you throw enough hours at something, you will develop skills. So what are you throwing your hours at? Are you throwing your hours at something that's productive? Or are you throwing your hours at something that you just find enjoyable but isn't productive? If you do the latter, that's fine, but don't complain when somebody else achieves more than you. I mean, you look at people who are successful and wealthy, they put an incredible amount of work into that. They work hours and they do things, they make sacrifices you're probably not willing to make. And that's how they achieved what they achieved. I'm not saying all of them did that. You do get people like Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian that did absolutely nothing except make a sex tape, but they're attractive women. Attractive women don't have to do shit. Welcome to life. If you're not an attractive woman, you have to work hard to achieve anything. But that's part of nature, that's part of life. You can cry about it, you can say how unfair it is, but life's not fair. If you want something, you gotta go get it. You have to come up with a plan, and you have to go get it. That's all I have to say.